Hello and welcome back to day 13 of 30 days of AWS Terraform. In this video, we'll be looking into data source. And again, I just want to remind you, if you are not following the series in the same sequence, then you might miss a lot of concepts. So make sure you follow the series in the same sequence from day 0 video onwards. And if you have not subscribed the channel, this is your chance. Subscribe the channel, support the channel, and I will keep publishing more quality content like this. All right. So let's dive into the video. Let's understand what exactly is a data source and why do we need it. Okay. So for example, let's say you need to provision an EC2 instance. Okay. Just a simple example. So here we are provisioning a EC2 instance. Now it needs various fields and it also needs an AMI. Okay. Now AMI is something which is a machine learning image, which is a Amazon machine image, and let's call it AMI over here. So for Linux, there are different versions of AMI for Ubuntu, for Amazon Linux, for CentOS. So every operating system has a different version of AMI and it's based on the releases. So there could be multiple versions of it. And these AMIs are not stored inside your AWS environment. It's outside AWS. It's basically it's an open source kind of repository from where you download the image and you provision the instance, right? Now, while provisioning EC2 instance, as you have noticed, we need to provide the AMI ID or AMI name. Okay. Now, how do we get that detail? First is like the one that we did, you go to AMI release page and just copy the AMI ID from there. But this is not something that you would do if you are using Terraform in an automated environment, right? You want everything to be done without any manual intervention or as minimum manual intervention as possible, right? So you don't want to hard code the AMI ID. So what you do is, so there is a resource available in Terraform and it's called data source. Okay, data source meaning this AMI has a data source and now you can just get the AMI ID from this data source. Okay, and you just need to provide, let's say, your Amazon Linux 2, like your operating system. You just need to provide that. And then you can just say, okay, so fetch me the latest image of Amazon Linux 2. Once you do that, it will fetch the latest image inside the EC2, and that's how you would use data source, and that's the basic example of how do we use EC2. Now what are we going to do in this video? So here is a diagram. So we are taking an example like how would an enterprise would use data source. It's not a big project because we are taking things slow, so we'll slowly move ahead. This is kind of the first project. I mean, it's not a project per se, but it's more like a small environment that we are starting with, and then we'll slowly move ahead with creating more complex environments. So we already have a shared VPC. So let's assume we have a shared VPC that's been used by multiple teams. So you have your DevOps team, development team, QA team, and so on. So this VPC already exists in AWS environment and it has two subnets, subnet 1, subnet 2. Now you need to provision new resources. You need to create two EC2 instances in subnet 1 and two EC2 instances in subnet 2. But you don't have to create new VPC or subnet. You have to use the existing VPC or subnet, right? So you need to provide the reference of VPC and subnet inside this environment. The same way you need to use Amazon Linux AMI from the pre-existing Linux image. Like you don't have to hard code it. Okay, because each of these EC2 instance will need a Linux image, AMI image. So you need to use the pre-existing image. So what do? We'll use data source for the Linux image over here, as well as for the VPC and subnet, we'll use the data source. So this is what we're going to do in this video. Okay, so let's start with our VS Code over here. Currently, I am in day 11 folder. Actually, day 11 and day 12 has the same folder. So I'm over here. Now let's make a copy of this folder, or let's take the copy of any folder. We just need the backend and provider, all those files. Main.tf will write it. So day 13. Okay, and let's go inside day 13 now. Now day 13 will have a main.tf over here. Okay, what I need is an AWS instance. So instead of AMI, we'll use data source. So let me remove this. And then let's keep it simple. I'm going to remove this line and use instance type as T2 micro. Okay, now I don't need instance count. I'm just going to use a single instance. And yeah, tags are good. Now, let's remove these as well. Okay, I'm just gonna create AWS instances. Okay, so for this demo, I'm just gonna create one, and then you can replicate the same. You can create multiple counts, you can do for loop, and make sure you complete the assignment given in the day 13 repository. Okay, so let's start with the first instance. Okay, first we need the AMI ID, then we also need subnet ID, and we need let's say a private IP. Okay, okay, so let's say we need these many fields, and most of these will come from the data source. So now you can create a separate file for data source, or you can just start from here and then you move that to a separate file, whatever is fine. So I'll start with creating the data source for VPC first. Okay, so for VPC, the way we do that is data. Okay, and again the resource name AWS VPC. Like, how do we know that this is the resource name? Let's go over here and search for AWS VPC. Now when you do that, earlier you were looking into resources. Okay, now as you can see, every resource has a resources section and a data source section. So now we need to check the data source section. So let's search for AWS VPC. I'm not sure why it did not filter all the things, but let's see. Let me just put that in double quotes if it's make any difference. Okay, yeah, better. Now we have some filtered results, and AWS VPC is over here. This is list resources. Okay, and here is the data source AWS VPC. Okay, so how do we do that? We start with data keyword AWS VPC, and then the name, and then there is ID. Now it is taking variable VPC. That means use the one that is already present. Okay, that is already in which account we have logged in already. So let's do that over here. So let's start with variable AWS VPC, and yeah, let's keep it blank. Now over here is the data source AWS VPC, and we need to give this a name as well, VPC name, and let's provide the value inside that. And if you can see over here, we need to provide the, like, we need to access it by ID. So ID is equal to var.vpc. Now we have provided the value var.vpc. Now the next is subnet. Over here, what it is doing, it is creating the CIDR block from the VPC. Like, see, CIDR subnet, that's another function that we are using, and it is taking the value from data AWS VPC dot selected. That means selected, this is the name. Okay, and dot CIDR block, like it has an ID field, so it has an CIDR block field as well, and you can check it from here, right, from the argument reference. And you can have more filters like filter and so on. So in fact, let's use the filter. So we have provided data VPC name. Instead of that, let's use the filter over here. Inside filter, we just, let's say you have multiple VPCs in your AWS environment. Now you need to filter based on some value. Okay, so let's say name is equal to tag colon name. So we are basically filtering it based on the name. Now values equal to, and you can check the value of your default VPC. Let's go back. let's do an AWS login. Sign into your console and let's use the user. Okay, and go to EC2, and inside EC2 there'll be VPC section on the left side. Oops, sorry, my bad. You just need to go to VPC. Okay, and click on VPC. For this region VPC, so there is this VPC, and then there is this default VPC, right? Default VPC does not have a name tag, so let's provide a name and let's call it default. Okay, and if we can see the tags, name equal to default, this is the value. Now let's go back, and now you can put the value as default. Okay, so now what we are doing, we are filtering the values from the existing resources in the AWS environment. Okay, so this will give us the default VPC details. Now inside our subnet, the next resource is subnet. So let's create a data source for subnet as well, AWS subnet, and let's call it shared. And inside that, again, let's use the filter, and then name is equal to colon tag. So let's use the name and let's put the values over here. Okay, let's see the subnet inside this default VPC. So this is the subnet. You can take any of those. Let's go ahead in this subnet. Let's copy the name of the subnet, or you can just go inside from here, and with the default VPC, this is the subnet, and let's add a name over here as the tag. Okay, so let's call it subnet A. Okay, so this subnet A belongs to the default VPC, so I'm just gonna need this subnet A. Let's go back in the filter, add subnet A as the name, and over here you provide values. You provide VPC ID is equal to data.awsvpc.id or VPC ID, right? And why did we add it over here? So let's check the data source for this AWS subnet. Okay, this is source, data source. Okay, so over here you see this is the subnet ID, but over here this is, we can use it filter like this, but we could also have a filter for the ID which is optional, right? VPC ID over here that desired subnet belongs to. This is an optional ID, but you can put it if you want. Okay, so this is done. Now we have added a VPC variable, and then using that variable, we have not used it per se because we then move to filter, right? So you can remove it if you want. So now it will filter based on the name value, which is the value is default, and then AWS subnet, the value is subnet A. We have added VPC ID. Now let's see what else we need. Oh yeah, we need the data source for AMI. So let's call it data AWS AMI, and let's call it Linux 2. Inside that, you can add first owners. Again, you can check the different fields from here. Okay, AWS AMI, and the data source. Where is the data source for AMI? API gateway AMI. Okay, so over here, this is the resource, I'm checking the resource data source. Okay, it has most recent equal to true. This will make sure that it will always take the latest image. Then you can add a regex name, owner equal to self, that is owned by us. Okay, or owned by Amazon if you want to pull the Amazon images. And then you can add multiple filters if you want. So let's go ahead and let's search for Amazon Linux 2 AMI. And let's go over here. Okay, and over here if you see, there are different, like these are the AMI IDs, but you can also use these different filters, like whether you need virtualization type, you can specify virtualization type as HVM, or you can also add the filter for name. You can also add, let's see what else is there. You can add the filter for name with the regular expression. You can also add the filter root device type is EBS, virtualization type is HVM, and so on, right? So based on that, if we were to pick the AMI name, so that's Amazon Linux AMI. And if we want to use Amazon Linux 2 AMIs, it's over here, I believe. Okay, let's go back and let's find the release. Oh, no, that's just an article. Okay, I need to find it out. Currently, I'm not sure from where exactly we can get it. But I have something handy, so I'm going to use that. But you can find it out. It's just, it should be there in some documentation that you can search for. So I'm going to filter it. First, let's start with the owners. So owners, let's use the Amazon provided images. So Amazon, if you have already created images, you can use owner as self. Then most recent is equal to true. So that means it will take the latest version of image. And then we can use multiple filters. So let's use a filter with the name equal to name. That means we are filtering based on the name. And the values is, okay. So over here we are using this image, and then there's a star in between star. This could be the specific versions that it can use. So use anything which is latest version, and we are just providing star over here. And then you can add additional filters inside this. So let's add additional filter, and let's call this filter as name is equal to virtualization type, virtualization hyphen type, values is equal to HVM, right? You can add more filter if you want, and you can check the documentation for the required field. Now we have a data source for VPC, we have data source for subnet, we have data source for AWS AMI. Now we need to use it over here. So now the AMI ID, we can get it from the data source. So data dot AWS AMI dot Linux2 dot, and when you do dot, it will show you the different arguments that you can use. So we need ID or image ID. So let's use ID. I think it's basically the same thing. Then the same way, subnet ID is data dot subnet share dot ID. So here's the subnet ID. And then you can provide private IP if you want, or let's just remove it. Okay, let's hit save. And if I do tf init, it will initialize the backend because we are running it for the first time. And if I do tf plan, okay, now it is showing error. Data source has not been declared in the root module AWS VPC ID. Okay, let's see. AWS VPC, it's the name is VPC name over here. but where did we use the VPC ID? AWS VPC name, okay, and dot ID or VPC ID dot ID. Okay, let's run the TF plan again. Okay, now it is saying that one resource to be created, AWS instance will be created, and with this AMI ID, okay, we filter it with the AMI name, but this is the ID, and T2 micro is what we have provided, and it should show you the subnet. Let's verify the subnet, 80B4A9AF. okay, so let's go back over here, 80B4A9AF. this is the same subnet that we have used. So that will show you that, yeah, subnet and VPC are also taken as correct. So we have not created the VPC, we have not created the subnet, still it is referencing the existing resources. Okay, so this is what we have done, and you can just apply to see the changes. But let's see if it throws any error. So TF apply auto approve. If it works, then that's it. If it doesn't work, then we'll troubleshoot it further. Okay, it's working, creating the resource. And once the resource is created, you will see it will be created in the same subnet as we have specified in the same VPC, and it will use the same AMI ID that we have filtered. So yeah, it will work. Otherwise, it would have thrown the error if there were any errors. So yeah, I'll destroy the resource after it is created. So make sure you also destroy the resource once you're done with the demo in every video. Otherwise, you will end up paying a lot of cost, and you don't want to do that. Apply is completed, resource has been created, and I hope by this point you have also tried it out. You have also completed this. Make sure you complete the assignment given in the GitHub repository. So that's it for this video. I will see you tomorrow with day 14. In day 14, I believe we'll be doing a mini project. So yeah, let's stay tuned for that, and let's catch up soon. Thank you so much for watching.